So, welcome everybody here to my interview with one of the most excellent creative writing teachers in the world,
Oh,
James.
wow.
Yeah, James Norbert Frey from Berkeley in California, USA. Jim, how are you doing?
Oh, wow. Yeah, we're getting ready to go to Australia tomorrow. So big doings around here.
Jim, for me, it's a true honor to talk to you about your life, creative writing, storytelling, and the issues of human life. That is our overall concern, and that is also told in great fiction. I will also follow a kind of a red line by asking you questions about how to become a novel writer. Because this is a question, I guess, that a lot of viewers worldwide will ask themselves, and even for me, it's a great wish. But let me say a few words about me. About 20 years ago, as a young filmmaker, I read your first creative writing book for the first time, How to Write a Damn Good Novel. I was so flashed how motivational and down to earth you broke down the techniques it needs to write a damn good novel or even a screenplay or a play. And I also loved the title of your book called How to Write a Damn Good Novel, a kind of an anti-intellectual thesis promising a how-to method, entertaining and not so sticky with philosophical, political, or whatsoever correctness. Then in the year 2000, I invited you to teach in Germany for the first time. It
Had a
was a
great time too.
Yeah, and it was a great adventure because creative writing at that time for fiction in Germany was really in its first steps. German storytelling came out of the 70s, 80s, and 90s and was quite intellectually and politically motivated. I remember how fascinated we all were when you showed us dramatic storytelling in the workshops by creating characters and a storyline just from scratch. You acted like a creative genius, like like an automatic software. We were all shocked. How is that possible? Since then, a lot of more books, videos, teachers, and programs came out in Germany, even worldwide, and a lot of them are alumni from you. But you and your mindset, Jim's, your spirit and knowledge is still unparalleled. For me, you
Wow.
belong to the best teachers in the world. You are an institution for creative fictional writing. Millions of novice and even seasoned writers read and reflect your ideas, paradigms, and models. Since then, we became friends. I owe you and Lisa, your wonderful wife, so much. Sharing time with you, discussing story, characters, plots, and the questions of being human are highlights of my life. I'm grateful for the achievement of your life until today and what is still to come in the next decades. You've wrote a lot of fiction books and the most best-selling books on creative writing worldwide. In Germany, for its own, there are between 3 and 400,000 copies sold. In a lot of markets, you are the godfather of so many writers. In Germany, one of the best writers we have is Andreas Eschbach, a great fiction writer. He names you as his teacher. You your 5 creative writing master books are How to Write a Damn Good Novel, How to Write a Damn Good Novel, Advanced Techniques, The Key, How to Write a Damn Good Fiction Using the Power of Myth, and How to Write a Damn Good Mystery, and finally, How to Write a Damn Good Thriller. And you're actually working on a next book called How to Write a Darn Good Romance. So, this was a very short introduction, and I want to mention the insightful videos you're actually producing since the last year about your favorite techniques and the videos you do with your former alumni. So, Jim, my first question is, I don't know if I ever spoke with you about that, but Jim, how did you become a fiction writer? How did you become a storyteller? How did you start playing God? How did that happen in your life?
It was, yeah, a little bit of luck and a little bit of insanity. I started think. Listen, first of all, I did very badly in high school. I mean, I had the lowest grade point average in the history of my high school, and it's still the lowest grade point average in the history of my high school. I was just awful. Later, I met Lisa, and she like straightened me out a little. So uh, I started going to night school, and eventually I went to college, and then I was gonna be a famous writer after I got out of college, and as soon as I got out of college, I wrote a novel, and we have here at the University of California, Berkeley, and they have an extension program where they hire teachers to teach all kinds of things. There's 880 when I was teaching there a few years ago. There was 880 courses each quarter. I mean, it's like a big thick catalog, and in this catalog there was I got rejected on my novel, right? And I shocked, right? So I sent in this catalog. There was a little ad that you for $65 you could get 3 readings of your novel from an expert, Lester Gorn. So I sent him my $65 and I met with him. And when I did, I they had an extension center in San Francisco, and I went over there. It's like 16 miles from Berkeley, so, not far. And I went over there, and he came in and he said, "Okay, this way." We went down the hall, and went into a room, and he said, "Listen," he said, "I'm going to tell you all about your novel, and if you get sick to your stomach or anything, and you want to throw up, there's a bathroom right next door. And if you decide you don't want to listen to this anymore, just get up and leave. No need to say anything. You don't even have to say goodbye. Just walk out." I thought, oh my God. And then he took out the manuscript that I'd sent him, and he had a piece of typing paper folded over, and he had a list on the piece of typing paper. And then he went down the list one at a time, and referred and started telling me what was wrong. He said that I should be congratulated because everything that could be wrong was wrong. I didn't miss anything. And then he told me, lack of conflict, lack of emotion, the characters were unbelievable. I mean, everything was wrong with this book. And as he told me, I kept sinking into the chair like this, just like sinking down, down, down. Sweat was coming off my forehead. And then when he got done, he said, and I didn't leave, he said, he gave me an approach to rewriting the book, which was to write a step sheet, which in my writing book, you'll see a lot about step sheets. Write a step sheet. He told me how to do, what it was, and just go write a step sheet that answers the criticism. So I went home and I couldn't write a step sheet. I mean, I wrestled with it, and I couldn't do it. So I wrote a new novel, which was absolutely, which pretty much had all the same problems as the first one. Anyway, he said, look, he said, I usually don't do this, but obviously you're trying really hard and you really want to do this. So I'll let you join my Saturday morning workshop. So he says, the only thing is, we're not going to be workshopping any of your work. Because the other people in the workshop would be, put off by something so awful. So just sit there and listen. So I sat there and listened for a long time, like 6 years. I mean, I went to that workshop. It met 30 times a year, and I went to it for several years. And after about 6 or 7 years, I wrote a story, and he said, "What happened is actually is good." I said, "It's completely by accident because I started to write another story and wrote this one by mistake." And the people in the workshop were like very solicitous. I mean, not kind. They were kind to me. They would say, "Okay, Jim, you need more irony." I'd say, "Irony, irony, irony. What is irony?" They say, "Well, it's like being ironic." I said, "Being ironic?" They say, "Yeah, it's like a guy drowns his wife in the bathtub to get the insurance money. And then with the insurance money, he buys a boat. And then the boat sinks. And that's ironic." I said, "Boat sinks. Bathtub." I said, "I don't have any water in this at all, Maybe I should have some water in my story." It was like pathetic. And meanwhile, he told me I should read Lejos Egri's The Art of Dramatic Writing. He was very big on premise, and he would write. I mean, about every other week he would have a lecture on premise, And people's stories, you'd say, you got a premise problem. You don't know what your premise is, or your premise is confused or so. So you really had to understand premise. And Egri's idea of what a premise was, I didn't get it. I didn't get it. So he said, look, just read Egri, 15 times. You'll get it. I read it 15 times. I didn't get it. So I was at that time working as a claims adjuster, and I was driving around to body shops all day writing estimates on smashed up cars. So he said, so I took Egri and I read it into a tape recorder, and then I played it in a tape deck in the car as I was going around. And I played it over and over and over, and I started to get an inkling of what it was about and how powerful it was. So one day I was listening, and it hit me. I got it. I see it. I see it. And I was on Polk Street in San Francisco in front of a body shop, Babe Zanka's body shop. So I stopped in the street, and I got out a tablet to write down what it is I understood, because I was afraid if I, parked the car, by the time I got the car parked, I would forget what it is that I got. So I'm writing it down, and people are beeping their horns, and the traffic's backed up around the corner, down the block, and I wrote it down, and then I went into the body shop to do my work, and then afterwards I still remembered what it is that I understood. But so I can, I teach premise, I write about premise, and I understand how hard it is for people to grasp it, even though it's extremely simple. So I've been teaching creative writing workshops for, I don't know, probably 30 years or more, and I understand people have problems. The first problem is, same with me, I didn't see how important it was. I didn't think of it as being important. I thought, well, I'm just creative, I'm a genius, I don't need this crap. I don't need this premise business. It's what critics need to know. It's what academics need to know. It's not what I need to know, but it is what I needed to know, but I didn't realize it. Then, I kept getting hammered by Lester about my premise, and I finally realized how important it was, and that's when I started working on trying to figure it out. Anyway, I've been teaching it for a long time, and a lot of people, same problem. They don't think it's useful. They don't want to know it. They don't want to use it. I just did a workshop up in Oregon with people I've been working with for years. I ask them, well, what's your premise? They didn't even think about it. They don't even think about it, but they should be thinking about it. But anyway, after all this time, I finally figured out how to explain premise the easy way, how to make it easy to understand. And but it took me, in my writing books, you'll see I explain it different ways. And different ways that people don't get. So now I finally figured out the way to explain it that they get. Would you like to hear how? Okay, here's how it works. We're having a nice conversation, Uwe, but you're not saying anything.
Okay. I listen to you, and I enjoy listening.
Okay. If you take there's novels. One of the problems is that novels are really not all the same thing. There are novels which are dramatic. There are novels that are poetic. There are novels that are genre entertainments. So there are different types of novels. So it depends on what kind you're writing. Now, if you're writing a detective novel, your premise is very simple. The detective, through diligence and brain work, is going to find a killer, right? I mean, that's your premise. Your premise, Egri says, is your intent. So if you're writing a mystery, that's your intent. So knowing you're knowing that this is what you're going to do. This is one reason people like to write genre stuff, is because the premise is already laid out for them. They know I gotta show a murder. I gotta show the detective getting an assignment to solve the murder. I gotta show him finding clues and interviewing witnesses, and you know. Anyway, so it's like it lays out the steps that you're going to follow when you write your book. It's already, or same with the romance. You know that the lovers are going to end up together in the end. So you're going to start out with a woman that needs a man and a man that needs a woman, and there's all kinds of problems to getting together, and they're overcoming obstacles to love, and so it lays it out for you, right? What your premise is. But if you're writing a dramatic novel, which let's say, or a dramatic play or a play or a screenplay, it's not the same, because it's not like, because there's an infinite number of possibilities. So what knowing your premise does, it does for you what the genre writer gets for free. It shows you how it shows you what needs to be included in your script, what needs to be excluded. So okay, so here's how you find out what your premise is. Okay, the definition of a dramatic story is that a character, sometimes more than one, but a character is transformed through a dramatic struggle. A dramatic character is transformed through a dramatic struggle. Okay, what's a dramatic character? Well, a dramatic character is one who's bigger than life and determined, and has these kind of qualities, right? It's a character worth reading about, a character who's probably bigger than life and dynamic and so on. Okay, and this character is involved in a dramatic struggle. It's like either forced upon him or he or she chooses it. A dramatic struggle is one in which the stakes are high, in which obstacles are high, and that's a dramatic struggle, right? It's not like hanging a picture up on the wall. That's not a dramatic struggle. But say say a guy is fighting with his wife over his kids. That's a dramatic struggle. The stakes are high, and everybody's well motivated, and Okay, so what happens in the end is you have a transformation of character, right? So, or through the story, you have a transformation of character. So that's what a dramatic story by definition is. It's a dramatic character involved in a dramatic struggle who has a dramatic transformation. Okay, your premise is simply naming what the character is, like Scrooge is a tight-fisted old skinflint, right? Cruel and self-centered, and he goes through the dramatic struggle he's involved in is with the ghosts who are forcing him to look at his life, right? And then in the end, he's transformed into a Santa Claus. Now, of course, this is a very melodramatic story, but it's easy to see what happens. You have a dramatic character bigger than life. Scrooge is certainly bigger than life. And he's certainly involved in a terrible with these ghosts, and he's transformed in the end. So this is what a dramatic story is. And so just simply naming your parts, like you're going to name I have my students, they'll come to me with sometimes a great character, and then he doesn't have any great struggle, and then he doesn't have any transformation, right? And it's not about thinking or talking, it's about being tested and overcoming obstacles. That's what causes the change in the characters. So like you say, so at these workshops, and I did it in Germany, I've done it here 100 times, we start out by throwing out, I usually start with a name. Give me a name of a character. Where did he grow up? What's his sociology and his physiology, and what's his psychology? Your character's physiology, like take a guy who's born muscular and handsome is going to have a different life than somebody who's born puny and ugly. It's like your physiology is kind of your fate in a way, and your sociology. Like you take, like I was reading about Trump's son, right? He's got a whole floor of this apartment building he lives in for his room, for his playroom. His playroom is one entire floor. Can you imagine the toys he has, right? He goes to a private school, and he's very smart, and so he's doing really great in this private school. And what's going to happen to him? He's going to go to Harvard, and his like, and he's good looking, and he's nice. I mean, he's got a nice, pleasing. It's like he's got a pleasing personality. So like his genetic input and his sociology is sending him to the moon, right? Well, you take some other kid. He's born to a crack addicted mother, right? He's a black, so he's he's got troubles with fitting into with the white society. He's say got a club foot. He's up against it right from the start, and it's going to cause him to have, as he grows up, it's going to cause him to have a completely different view of the world than Trump's son. Well, so that's how we make up the characters, with their sociology and their physiology, which combines to make their psychology. And two kids in the same family might have a different psychology, like depending on how they take the training. So when I was in Germany, I probably haven't talked to you about this, but when I did those workshops for you in Germany, the characters that we made up over there were different. I mean, in some ways they were the same, but often then I have the people write, in a group situation, we make up a character. And then I would have everybody in the group. Well, I would say I'd make up three characters. Like a man, a woman, and an old guy, or something like that. And then I would have people write diaries, from their point of view and their voice, right? To show people you can get in the head of a character and you know how they think. But what's different about Germany and the United States is the way that the people thought. Because one of the things I wanted people to write about is how you feel about your parents. I mean, this character we've made up, write about, how you feel about your parents. The anger that people came out in these diaries against parents was just astounding to me, just really astounding. And the way they talked about their parents as being strict and holy mackerel. Whereas in the United States, you get a lot of these diaries, and the parents are flakes, or they smoke dope, and they're not there, and they're absent, or but very rarely are the parents strict, or oppressive to the kid. But in Germany, a lot of them. Well, remember there was a girl in the workshop who said that who was very pretty, and she was about 25 years old, and really sweet gal. And she said that we're making up some character, and she said, well, she used to be a pianist. I said, oh yeah, really? She said, yeah, she played with the Berlin Philharmonic or some huge orchestra doing a solo when she was 16 years old. I said, well, that's incredible. I said, you must be really huge now, Oh, she said no, because her grandmother would make her play 6 hours a day, and if she stopped playing, the grandmother would whack her hands with a stick. And so she became this concert pianist, and the day she was 18, she walked away from the piano and never touched it since, which, to me was just so horrible, But I never met anybody. I mean, I meet people that have, driven their kids to success, but never anybody like that, never so in the U.S. I mean, I was really astounded. And I don't know see, those people that I worked with over there were all really smart and educated. Oh my God. A guy comes up to me over there and he says, Professor Frey, I'm not really a professor, but he called me, Professor Frey. He says, my English is no so good. I only had 16 years. And he said, and I don't quite get the vicissitudes of your ironic humor. But they were really good to work with because boy, they work hard, Ooh, ooh, ooh. And I really enjoyed meeting them and working with them. And some of them I still hear from. I mean, that was a long time ago. They sell a book or something, they write to me and tell me about it. So I still hear from some of them. But in many ways, they were like the American counterparts, and creative. They had good ideas for books. They were a lot like. See, well, of course, I'm teaching at UC Berkeley Extension, right? And I'm getting these people these courses cost a lot of money, and I was getting people that were really intelligent, and lots of doctors and lawyers, and engineers, and really, really bright people, well educated. Same thing in Germany, it was like same thing, bright, well educated people. Yeah, that was fun, and it was different, in somewhat different in Munich than it was in Cologne. The people were a little different. I think in Cologne they were more apt to be writing mystery novels and stuff like that, and the people in Munich were more apt to be writing more serious stories. You should do that again, Uwe.
Yes, I will. And
Oh,
when in your course you spoke about dramatic writing
yeah,
and Hegel, about thesis, antithesis, and synthesis.
right.
And I have the feeling like the premise has a lot to do with this system.
Yes,
It's like because somebody's driven by an idea, let's say a thesis, and he
yes,
drives it, and every conflict approves or checks or tests this thesis. And
yes,
in the mid climax, it changes towards his transformation. He learns that he has to change, otherwise it will be a tragedy, and he will die or he will destroy his children. So I think thesis and the synthesis, these are, this is the thesis changes through growth to the synthesis, and at the end what we call the premise is probably, I don't know, that's my question to you, that the thesis is probably the thing that drives the character. It's his main belief. It is what his character is all about. And he goes with this idea into the story and all the conflicts in his situation, but he has to learn through conflict, and that he has to change or he will die. And what do you think about that?
um, I think we got a sort of a confusion of terms. Uh, I preached that um, about the Hegelian dialectic, that a story progresses in the Hegelian dialectic. And this is another thing that Egri talked about. And another thing that I figured wasn't important and so didn't pay any attention to for several years. I was just up, just doing this workshop last week, and I was trying to explain the Hegelian dialectic once again to people and how it works. It's in 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 fiction writing, this the idea of the thesis and the antithesis and the synthesis works this way. I'm really simplifying this, but just as a way to demonstrate it. But we'll say the thesis situation or the the opening situation of a story. Say a guy's coming down for breakfast and he's on his way to work and he feels good that day. And he's just gotten dressed and had a shower and he's feeling good and he goes into the kitchen. Now that's the situation, right? The Hegelian dialectic refers to the situation, the change of the situation, and in it the characters change because of the conflicts. So his wife is in a foul mood. And she says, "We don't have enough money. We're out of eggs. I can't pay the. We can't. We can barely buy groceries. You need to ask your boss for a raise, right?" Well, this isn't the best time of year. The company's not doing too good. This is conflict between the two, right? He's pushing for this position of maybe later, and she's pushing for this position now. Okay, so she says, "Listen, if you don't get a raise, I'm taking the kids and going back to Indiana," right? And he says, "Okay, I'll ask the boss for a raise." Now, so you see, that's the thesis was happy, the antithesis was anger, and the result. The new situation is he leaves. He's going to, he's boiling mad, but he's going to ask the boss for a raise. Okay, he goes in the office, and there's the boss sitting in his office. He's early for work, so he goes in to tell the boss, and he's gotten in the meanwhile, he's gotten his guts up, and he goes in the boss's office and he demands a raise. And the boss says, "Well, God damn it, we're in trouble around here. We can't afford what we're paying you. In fact, you're fired." Right? See, that's the new situation. Now we got the news. Now he comes out of the boss's office. The dialectic has worked again. We're out now. He's depressed and angry. Cleans out his desk and he's terrified to go home. So he goes to a friend's place, and the friend says, "This is really a ridiculous story, but
No, I don't know. Could be a normal story,
How the dialectic works."
Yeah.
So he goes to the friend's house feeling desperate, and the friend says, "Well, look, I'll let you use my gun. You go down to the convenience store, and they get it's Friday. They'll have a lot of money in the register, and you can go home with a bundle." So he takes the gun, and he sees his only way out. He goes down and he robs a grocery store, and he comes out. He feels elated until he's surrounded by police and trundled off to jail. You see, now the situation has changed. Now he's in jail. He's got to get a lawyer, and so on. And now he's going to have trouble getting a job because nobody wants to hire an ex-con. So the Hegelian dialectic refers to that changing situation. That something happens, situation changes, and within that situation, the characters change. They go, the emotion. There's emotional growth and character growth. Character growth is like Scrooge has. That's wonderful character growth. One of the stories I was talking about up in Oregon was Captain's Courageous. You know that story?
No.
No. It starts out, you got this boy who's spoiled rotten, and he rich boy, and he's spoiled rotten, and he's rotten in every way, right? And the school the private school, he gets kicked out of the private school he's in, and the father, his mother's dead, his father's going to Europe, so the father has got nothing he can do with the kid, so he decides to take the kid to Europe with him, and hopefully he can help straighten this kid out, right? And on the trip, I don't want to go into how it happens, but he falls off. He's showing off, and he falls off the boat as they're crossing the Grand Banks in the North Atlantic where the fishermen are, and he's picked up by fishermen, and he's taken aboard, and he demands to be brought back to civilization, where his father, where he can meet his father and stuff. And they won't meet any of his demands. You're on this boat for the next 6 months. We're out here for 6 months or 5 months or whatever it is, and you either work for your living or you starve. They won't feed him unless he works. And he gives lip to the captain, and the captain just smacks him and says, you're going to thank me for that someday, and stuff like. Anyway, so you've got this incremental change, and the boy becomes a fisherman. The boy becomes a man, and when he gets off the ship, he's totally transformed from before, from the start. It's really a wonderful story. It's a film. You can get it on Netflix, I think, or YouTube. Here you can get it on YouTube. I think your YouTube is different, right?
Yes. No,
But
no, no,
anyway,
yeah. We have a different code because we're in Germany, but normally we can find same material on the web.
yeah,
Should be the same, but with different
it's an old
doors,
movie. I
opening
think it was
doors.
made
Yeah.
in the 30s.
Okay.
It's really a good movie. Yeah,
Great. So considering the scene that you created with a man, coming to breakfast and his wife tells him about
yeah,
the very hard situation they face, and
yes,
here we see exactly action and reaction and
yeah,
thesis and antithesis and
yeah,
little sequences, and this is growing step by step, new layers,
yeah,
beautifully told. That's dramatic storytelling. It was new for me, or dramatic writing,
yeah,
like Lajos Egri mentioned. How do you
yeah,
would describe in this situation, especially, the premise then? Because I saw a connection between premise and dramatic writing, because it's like a microstructure, and the premise is a bit like the macro structure. Because what is the driving force here? The driving force is that he doesn't want to recognize that he has a very badly economic situation, and his
yeah,
wife doesn't want to stand it anymore. She says, "I
right,
can't survive with our kids here. I'm going
right,
to leave if you don't change."
right.
So how would you describe in this situation? Because you gave a fantastic example of dramatic storytelling, and how do you see the premise in this case? Can you see it, or is it difficult?
Egri said in his book that premise could be just, a premise of any particular story could be described in more than one way and all be right. You know, it, I mean, just you're using different words to say the same thing, and so the premise is what's at the root of the story, right? And that's why it's important to know it. Um, like this coming of age story, the boy that falls off the boat, right? What is it about? It's about a boy who's forced into manhood.
Yeah, in this case as well, because he has
Huh?
to learn to earn money for his family. He has to be responsible.
Right, right.
Otherwise, she's leaving and he's alone.
So, I mean, I just use that as an example to show
Yeah,
you
yeah. Thank you.
about
Thankful. I'm grateful. Yeah.
about about the Hegelian dialectic. But
Yes.
say you were really going to write this story, and you were going to you'd have to say, well, what is it about this guy? What is he a ne'er do well, or is he lazy, or what is it about, what is at the core of his character that is going to be transformed by the course of the
His
story?
fate, kind of fate. What is he, in what is he driven? And you feel the fate in the story. Like the whole energy moves towards something, right?
Yes, yeah, yeah. Uh, it's because Egri said that um, that it's the premise
The
is the
ruling
intention.
passion.
It's the intention of the author,
Yeah, exactly.
right? So what is it that the author wants to tell here,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Right.
What he
Well,
wants us to
what
emotionally impact.
that's why it's important, because that story could be about a nagging wife.
Yes.
You know, it
Yes,
could be,
exactly.
it could be about a guy that's nagged into a life of crime. It might be a coward. He's afraid to face life.
Yeah,
I mean, that story could be, and that's why it's important to know the premise because
exactly. To decide, yeah.
it shows you where you're shining your light. You know, if depending on what kind of story you want to tell. Um, uh, and that's why it's so important to know it. Because if, say, instead of the story being about everything, it's about it's about one thing. It's about a guy who is a blank. What is he, and what happens to him? Say say the guy say the guy's henpecked and terrified of his wife, and that's the story you're going to tell. Well, then that's what you have to show. See, that's what the premise does for you. It tells you what you have to show in your transformation, right? So,
Where the growth comes from. The wife could change as well, or he
that
changes. But where's the
thank
transformation? That you have to decide.
right. So you have to decide what the transformation is going to be, and so that means that like with Scrooge, you start out as a skinflint, right? I find that so many people, when they're writing their stories, they start out like uh, it's in a workshop I did some time ago. We start out with this girl who dresses up as a boy and joins a ship's crew, a research vessel's ship crew. She's already transformed when she steps on the ship.
Hmm.
You know, it's uh, it's not like she's transformed into self-actuated person. Is what the author wants to show, that the adventure she's on changes her, right? But she's already changed in the beginning, right? So that would, like, in my workshop, I say, wow, that has a premise problem, because you don't know what your premise is, or you're not following your premise. It's
Great. You said you start with a character. Yeah, that's the
yeah.
idea to start.
Yeah, it's all good story. I mean, you can't think of a single good story that doesn't come from character. I mean,
Yeah,
all good stories come from character.
that's a bit the difference to Aristotle, who said we start with a plot. And Lajos Egri found out, and Lester Gorn, and you as well, that you have to the plot comes out of the character and
Right.
its premise, and so there is a conflict arising, and so
Yeah.
the plot is going on or starts off,
Right.
right?
Comes up with character.
Another
Right. And
question I
because
have.
that's what be transformed. Right.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
Right.
Yeah. Um, I have one
Well,
idea.
Aristotle was just a critic. He wasn't
Sorry, yeah, yeah,
he wasn't a fiction writer.
yeah.
He was just a critic.
A thing that thinking about is an example. The book Uncle Tom's Cabin.
Yeah.
Harriet Beecher Stowe has,
Yeah.
from my point of view, she suffered from seeing the slavery in the States.
Yes.
And from my point of view, she was empathetic, and she was looking, from my point of view, she was looking for a story how she could probably change the situation. And then she found the original character, because there was already a character like Uncle Tom's Cabin. And as from my point of view, there was probably, a suffering, or a, a situation that she wanted to change, because the American president said probably to her, or he was quoted that she said, "This little woman, she started a civil war," and
Yeah.
with the Uncle
That
Tom's
was
Cabin
Stewart.
changed the mindset of a lot of people.
That
The
was the
book
Secretary of War Stewart said that.
exactly, and I heard that.
Seward, Secretary of War, said that she was the little lady that started it all.
Okay,
But
and
what's fantastic about that book? I think that book was read by something like 67% of the people, or something like that. I mean, the number of people that read that book. I mean, in the North, where the anti-slavery people were. I mean, the percentage of the population that owned that book and read it is just so enormous. She lived the rest of her life on the proceeds from that book, and she lived to be quite elderly. It's just that book was so gripped the population. You know, I mean that. I mean, Little Nell or whatever her name was. I mean, she was on everybody's lips. You know, and it was like there really was a Simon Legree. You know, in fact, the name Simon Legree came into to the language, meaning a tyrant. You know, so yeah, it's
What I
pretty
wanted to
amazing.
say is that you had this weakness, a situation, the world of the everyday, but was terrible in a kind of way. And she
Yes,
chose this story. She had this character, and she starts with a kind of a running start. She goes very fast into the story, and you're
yeah,
really stuck in the story.
yeah,
I empathize with the story, and I fear, my God, what is happening here? Because
yeah,
the owner of the farm talks to the person who is who negotiates with the slaves, and I had the feeling like every so many people read the book and it changed their mindset, and it was really the founding idea of the change, in the Northern American or in the United States society. So my
yeah.
question was, do you start with a character, or where does great stories come from? Do they come from
Oh,
a real
you,
problem, a
yeah.
societal, problem, or from the character, or from an idea you wake up in the morning, you have a great idea? Because you wrote a lot, I didn't mention, but you wrote a lot of novels. So where does, from your point of view and the experience as this great teacher, where does stories come from as well? So character, but how do you see this situation? Where
Well,
comes
I
great
think
stories?
it comes, it comes from the author's. The author has this feeling this is going to make a great story, right? He's got some idea, right? And that's true. You might start out with a great idea, like, say you got a great idea for a thriller, that, oh, I got this great idea that this bad guy has this gas that makes people insane and they kill each other. So it's like the perfect weapon, right? You just drop this gas on people and they start killing each other, or something like that, or uh, we're going to uh, have everybody take a vaccine, and this vaccine's going to do something, right? But yeah, you have this idea, and then I think that whatever your idea is, you start with this idea, and then you immediately start creating the characters, right? And that's one of the problems that people have when they don't do that. They have this great idea, and then the characters are all just wooden cutouts performing, uh, their role in this idea. Uh, you mentioned ruling passion a moment ago, and sometimes what the story is about, and I think this is what you were sort of alluding to earlier about the character having this inner force, right? Well, that's his ruling passion, and sometimes uh, that's what the story is about. It's about how this ruling passion is changed, right? There's a wonderful movie. It's called The Snow Walker. It's a cheap Canadian film that it's very cheaply made. It was made in the 50s from a Moat. You know that Canadian writer Moat? He was like the most popular Canadian writer. He wrote a lot about rural culture in Canada. Okay, the guy has this, we'll say Moet. I don't know Moet. I never
Yes,
met him.
Moet, or it's kind of French name, Canadian French Canadian name. Yeah.
Canadian. Like I don't know what his idea was. And people who know Canada and know the Indians up there say he got all kinds of things wrong. Just like Uncle Tom's Cabin had all kinds of things wrong, right? I give you an example of. Would you imagine that slaves had guns?
No,
They had guns.
they had guns. Okay.
They had guns because they didn't get enough protein in their diet, so they had guns to shoot squirrels and stuff. And so, like, they recently have been doing, studies of slave quarters. Digging up, looking for, the anthropologists have been studying slave quarters, and they found all this bullet making equipment. And slave quarter after slave quarter, there's bullet making equipment, and they couldn't believe it. But it's true, right? They had guns. So, like, the culture on those in those slave societies was, I think, far different than Uncle Tom's Cabin. She didn't get it right. It doesn't make any difference. Of
Yeah.
course, I mean, slavery was a horrible thing, and I'm glad it's gone. But it wasn't like she portrayed it.
Hmm.
Uh,
There were
and,
different forms of slavery as well. There was more, different. She describes it I saw it in a historic documentary that there were slavers, there were liberals, or there were
yeah,
Christian slaveholders. There
right.
was more tolerant or that really
Yeah.
loved and respected their people. But there were also,
There were
sadistic people,
blacks
and
who
she
were
showed a
slaves.
sadistic in
Yeah,
it
yeah,
started with a very nice slaveholder, yeah, in
yeah.
under parentheses, and went into sadistic slaveholders. So, and this was the reason she could change that or transform the situation.
Yeah. Anyway, about the ruling, we'll get back.
To the snow walker.
I read that book about 60 years ago, so I mean, it's hard for me to remember the
Okay,
plot. But uh, ruling passion is that thing that drives the character,
carries
right?
forward. Yeah.
Like they have a ruling passion, right? And that ruling passion, uh, when you create a character, is like a really important thing because it's sort of like a thumbnail of what that character is, right? So it's like if I tell you a character, her name is Mrs. Wiggly, and her ruling passion is to have her own way.
Okay.
Once you know that, I mean, once you know that about a character, it's pretty easy to write. I mean, it's like when she walks into the scene, she's going to want things her way, right? Okay. A ruling passion could be something like really simple to be a great baseball player, or football player, or something. Or it could be more, could be like a young girl might have might have had a rotten childhood, and her ruling passion is to have children and raise them, give them a happy life. So, I mean, ruling passion could be anything. I mean, it can be anything. But once you know what it is, then it's easy to understand the character and their motives and what they're going to be doing in the course of the story. Uh, I recommend people write these step sheets and sort of outline a story before you write it. And it's very hard to do for people. I mean, it was very hard for me. I understand why it's hard. It's very hard. Uh, but it's also fantastic technique because you can save yourself months and years of work by knowing the story that you're going to tell ahead of time. And it's not like it's chains. You can change it. If you get into the story and you say, oh, wait a minute, I made this guy too corrupt, or I made this guy too good, or, he's not enough, he doesn't have enough kind of sides to him. He's like too simple or something. You can change it. You can change it. And you will change it. But at least when you start out, I'll tell you a story about doing a workshop. If you, this is going to sound like bragging. Oh well, I'm getting that age where I can brag. Anyway, I went to St. Louis, Missouri, which is in the middle of the country, right? And there's a hotel there that was built in the teens or the 20s for hunters, for fishermen to come from St. Louis. They go 100 miles on a train, and the train stopped right in front of the hotel. And this hotel was kind of rustic, and it was for rich guys to go hunting, right, and fishing, right. It was a recreation hotel for rich guys. Anyway, a rich guy bought this. This was really an experience because there was a woman running the hotel, and I was being sponsored by a writers group, and from St. Louis, and they had, I think we had like I don't know, 30 writers, something like that. I mean, it was a big group, and my partner Barbara McHugh and I went there to put on this workshop, and to get into the workshop, because we had about 100 people that wanted to be in. We selected the best writers that we could, right? So we went there and we started making up a story. You know, I mean, the first day we talked about characters and making them up with a sociology and a psychology and a ruling passion. We made up 3 characters, and then we started making a step sheet, and we wrote like the first 20 steps on the second day, right? We had first the first thing people did was they wrote diaries in the voices of the characters we made up. And then the next day, we wrote a step sheet. We did about the first third of the story if it was going to be a novel, you know. Okay. Then we had people. We took the first 5 steps, and then people could volunteer to write any one of the 5 steps. So we had a bunch of people writing step 1, a bunch of people writing step 2, right? And we decided what the style was going to be. It was going to be third person. It was going to be, you know, blah, 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 right? Okay, so they wrote these steps, you know, they wrote these sections. Then at night, and then the next morning, we read them. Every single one of those pieces were better than the pieces that they'd given us to get into the workshop. Every single one of them was
Huge
better.
step of change, a huge growth step.
And the reason it was better, you know, I mean, they didn't, you know, it was only been there 2 days. The reason it was better, they knew the characters and they knew the purpose of the step. You know, they knew how it functioned in the story. And so there's no hesitation when they sit down to write. What happens when writing gets bad is when the writer sits there and says, now let's see, you know what happens and what happens next. And, you know, in other words, they're inventing the story at the same time they're writing the scene, you know, and that's where it gets.
It's a fantastic point. I think it's a bit like acting in a box, or, you know, if you have the box, you can write very strong. If everything is open, you know, you don't know what to do. And I think you decided exactly what the character is about. You decided the dramatic steps. You decided, you spoke about the premise, and they knew exactly in which, which box they had to act and say. So they were very strong, very clear, powerful conflict, great details.
And so they when they sit down to write it, they write it with confidence. You know, they have
with safety.
Writer. They're a confident writer, and
confident,
you can see
exactly. Yeah.
When people are writing without confidence, when they're discovering the story at the same time they're writing it, how they don't know where to put the emphasis.
Exactly.
They don't know. Do we emphasize the nagging wife, or do we emphasize the guy's a coward, or do we emphasize, you know, what are we going to emphasize?
Great example, wonderful example.
Right. So that was so eye-opening. I went, wow.
Wow, shocking. I think the productivity, when you know what you do, you're much more productive.
Well, like I'm writing this How to Write a Darn Good Romance, right? And to tell you the truth, I have not read a million romances. I'm reading them now. I mean, I'm reading a lot of romances now.
But you studied this topic since decades. I know you spoke about that 20 years ago. You know.
Yes, right. But I haven't read. You know, like people who like romances read, you know, 2 a day sometimes. So, you know, 5 a week or whatever. You know, they read tons of them. And I haven't read tons of them, but I'm reading them now. I'm reading some of the big writers. What was beginning to lose it. Anyway, in the How to Write a Darn Good Romance, I wrote 4 scenarios. You know, where I made up the characters. I made up step sheets for 4 different romances.
The dramatic paradigm is fully completed, right?
Yeah, right. The whole, you know, like, I give you an example of one of them. This one I really like, really, really like. The girl is a pediatrician, and she's 28 years old, and she's just studied her ass off her whole life. She has a terrible time with men. I mean, she stutters when she gets in, when she gets in a situation with a man. She's nervous. She doesn't know what to talk about. She doesn't know how to play the game with men, right? And so what she has at her work, she's got a friend who's the office manager, and they spend Friday night, get a pizza, they unwind from the week, and they watch movies, romance movies, right? And this gal is my heroine is a Indian American from India. Her parents are from India. And the parents are very successful. They own a restaurant. They own an Indian restaurant, very good restaurant, and they're very successful. And does quite well as a pediatrician. She's only been in practice a few months, but she loves her work and loves her little patients. And the only thing missing in her life is love. So her parents say, your Aunt Uma is visiting from Florida, and she has a great surprise for you. And the surprise is that they've found a husband for her, an arranged marriage, right? Now, her parents had an arranged marriage, so it's not so unusual, right? And in that culture, it's not unusual at all. So this guy that they've arranged is a New York's investment banker. He's worth $500 million. He's handsome, plays tennis, and he's looking for a wife, and it's perfect. He'll set her up in her own clinic in Manhattan, and they travel. He travels. He goes to UN conferences, and the guy's a super big shot, right? So they show a picture of the guy. He's dead bang handsome. He's the same ethnic background. His ancestors come from the same town in India, and the aunt has met him, and they say he's a delightful guy, and he's anxious to meet her. So she says, okay, if he's not completely repulsive, I'll marry him, right? Right. So he's coming to San Francisco, and they go out to a French restaurant, not their own restaurant. They go to a fancy French restaurant. Ernie's, it's called. I mean, I've got it right down to the very restaurant. So they go to Ernie's, and the guy's name is Rabba. Rabba shows up, and he is handsome, and he's gracious and polite, and he has he not only wants to make money, he likes to help people, and he's horrified that people have been cheated in his profession, and he's dedicated his life to dedicated his business to being straight up and honest, and he seems like a really great guy. So as they're sitting down to eat, her eyes meet the waiter's eyes. Zap! Love strikes. She can't believe it, this waiter, right? So she's shaken by this impulse. Suddenly she's struck by this waiter. So she got to get control of herself. So she finds this storeroom. She pretends she has to answer a phone call. So she goes to the storeroom to get control of herself, and he comes in, and he kisses her, and he kisses her again, and she pulls away from him, and she's starting to leave, and she goes back and she kisses him. Right. Then she goes back to the table, and she's really shaken by this, right? This attraction to this waiter, and he shoves a thing in her pocket that he's an actor, part-time waiter, part-time actor, and he's going to be in a play, and so he sticks his handle in her pocket. So meanwhile, she's listening to her aunt rattle on about how rich this guy is, and the guy rattles on about how beautiful he finds her and stuff like that. And meanwhile, she's just trying to get composure, right? At the end of the dinner, he says that he's willing to sign a marriage contract, and she's willing too, and she signs. So a couple of days later, she's telling her friend, the office manager, and the office manager is just horrified that she's going to have this arranged marriage, right? She believes in love, and she tells him about the waiter, and she wants to see this waiter. So the two of them go to the play, and it's supposed to be at a dinner theater, and what it is, it's in a basement of a church, and the dinner is hot dogs. That's it. And a guy during the play, she can't tell which one it is. They're all wearing heavy makeup, right? She knows it's not Hamlet, because Hamlet's fat, but so she knows that's not him. But she doesn't know which part he's playing. And a guy in the audience chokes on his hot dog. So she runs to the rescue and tries to do the Heimlich maneuver, to pop it loose, and she's not strong enough. And so her lover jumps off the stage, pops it out, but he's still choking. So she does an emergency tracheotomy, cuts a hole in his windpipe and puts in a part of a fountain pen, a ballpoint pen, and so the guy can breathe. And he explains that he used to be a medic he was a medic in the military, and that's what that's why he knows about it, right? And he's so big, right? And he kisses her again, right? She swoons again. He goes back up on, the audience claps. He goes back up on the stage, and she says, "I got to get out of here," right? So she leaves and doesn't tell him who she is or where she lives or anything, right? So we switch to him, and he tries to track her down. Anyway, I really enjoyed making up this story. I really enjoyed making up this story. And since I made 4 of them, I thought, well, gee, I should really write one of these
Absolutely.
and sell it, right? So I've another one. Another one of the 4 is a romantic suspense, which is a lot like detective fiction. So I thought I'd write that one because I'm much more experienced in writing a pure romance. In this Indian one, there's no other story but the romance. That's it. And of course, they get together in the end.
Of course. I frankly, I believe that you have a great talent for especially romantic novels. And even you didn't write such things, but I heard other stories as well from you. And I
Yeah,
found what a powerful craft. I am so attached to the story. And you just spoke for 4 or 5 minutes about the story, yeah, with the
right.
first 2 steps, the first 2 steps, but we are so excited to see or to hear the third and fourth and fifth steps and how they come
Yeah,
together. But I think that's
he's
romantic. It's
he's from Tennessee, and his family are bootleggers.
okay.
So, well, the idea is you make opposites, right? When you make up the characters, they're opposite, and these people are like, and he never got out of high school, and she's a doctor, but he reads a lot. So when we get to his apartment, we see he's got stacks and stacks of books, but he's not much education. And in the course of the story, he tries out for a Broadway play, and in the end, he gets the part. So, romances are kind of fantasies, So,
But it brings. Otherwise, we wouldn't survive as humanity. So it's a thing that everybody can relate to. So I think I can see myself in this rich guy. I can see myself also in this actor, but I also can see myself in her. Because
yeah,
she's like the big fat Greek wedding. It's the
yeah,
Indian wedding. It's the Indian
yeah,
situation, and it's a
yeah,
very small room. They are very close together. They are stuck in their tradition, but we love these traditions. And I want to ask you about orchestration, because this is a wonderful example how you could orchestrate. You have her,
right,
you have the parents,
yeah.
and you have that, and the parents are
The
a
aunt, the aunt, and then I had the girlfriend at
Exactly,
work.
the aunt. Exactly, yeah. And the
The aunt,
girlfriend.
the aunt is she married a guy who made a fortune in Florida real estate. Right. It was also an arranged marriage, and
It's her
it
role model. Yeah,
worked out great for her.
yeah.
And she's the kind of person who likes to run everything. So she not only found the husband, she's going to find the wedding dress and the party favors, and she's going to run the whole thing. And the mother, the mother in this had an arranged marriage, but she had a true love that she passed up for the arranged marriage. And toward the end of the story, she does a few things that are kind of odd that the reader doesn't quite get what she does. Like she tells the when the boy comes to the restaurant to plead his case, and they say no, we're going for this. She's going to marry this guy. Um, the mother follows him out and says, "Listen, we're not evil people. You know, we're this is our tradition. We're not evil. We're not. We don't hate you, or we're not evil people." Well, then we find out toward the end that she had this love, and she passed it up, and she says to her daughter, uh, "Not a day goes by she doesn't think of this man. It's been 50 years, right?
For me, this is the ruling passion. That there's this instinct of true love.
Right,
That's
right.
how would you describe
And
then
at
the
in the end, she's going to marry Rab. And they have a big fight with um, with our hero, and insulting things are said, uh, about his, and he's from the South, right? He's from Tennessee, and he says, and they accuse him of certain things. I forgot what now, but he says, uh, "Where I come from, a man of honor, does not stand for such insults." And in days gone by, I'd be meeting somebody at dawn. You know, So he's like they have the Indian people have their traditions and their values, and he has his. And I think a lot of people think of these hillbilly people as immoral because they make illegal whiskey. His family's been making illegal whiskey for 300 years. I tell you an interest. I've been doing a little research about illegal whiskey. You are told in history, if you've studied American history, and all the Americans have studied American history, of course, we have to in high school, that the first time the Americans met the British in the field, with lined up and shooting at each other, was at Lexington and Concord in Massachusetts, right? Not so. 15 years before, the Army was sent to North Carolina to put down the whiskey distillers, the moonshiners, the illegal whiskey makers. And the illegal whiskey makers got their friends and neighbors, and they met the British in the field, and they drove them from the field. This was 1750. This is 1750. The illegal. This family that I'm writing about was in the whiskey business then. For all that time they've been in the illegal whiskey business. And then after the Revolutionary War and the Americans took over, the Americans sent troops down to the south into the woods to get rid of the whiskey, the illegal whiskey, because George Washington owned the largest whiskey distillery in the United States. President George Washington, the first
didn't know
president.
that? Yeah.
Yeah, no, nobody knows it, right? It's unknown. So they went down to the south to destroy these illegal stills, and they had what they called the Whiskey Rebellion, and it
Yeah, I
was
heard about it. Yeah.
pitched battles, and the government withdrew. They never wiped out that illegal whiskey industry, and they're still trying to wipe it out. Still, when I was down, I have a boat in North Carolina, and there's a guy that quite nice fellow. He sells moonshine liquor at the TV room at the harbor where my boat is, and people come in and give you a free sample. And uh, he said to me, he says, "You want to make some extra money?" I said, "What do I have to do?" He says, "All you got to do is just drive my car up to Virginia, and park it in a parking lot and go have dinner. After dinner, drive back." Meaning, of course, somebody would put something in the trunk while I was eating dinner. That's, that's all I had to do. Well, they're still moving that stuff around. They're still selling it. Do you know why it's white? They call it white lightning.
No.
Moonshine it's clear.
Okay.
It's whiskey, but it's clear.
Okay.
Well, what makes whiskey brown is the barrels that it's aged in, and moonshine isn't aged.
Okay.
It's making
That's
stuff,
right. Yeah, of course.
but it's like really strong. Ooh.
So
You should.
yeah.
I say see somebody take a sample of it.
Yeah.
But anyway, this guy's family's been in business in the moonshine business for a long, long time, and they have their traditions, And since I spent some time now in North Carolina, I have more respect for these people. That they're rural. They can remember the Civil War and the Revolutionary War. It's amazing how long their memories are, and their families. How they'll we went to a Protestant church. I'm a Catholic, but we went to this Protestant church, to see what's going on. This Protestant church was formed in about 1790. Well, I know to you guys that's not long ago, but in America that's a very long time ago, And her family, it's a woman we talked to at the church, her family was on the first board, So her family's been going to this church for one hell of a long time. You don't see that in California, People are moving all the time, moving in, moving out, coming in from back east.
It's also kind of an orchestration. The people or the mindset in California, or these long traditions, long over generations, values which were passed to the next generation.
Yeah.
And that's for you very good, because you have to study all the time, to do research that you can create new characters that are real, that are authentic. And I think that helps you, in North Carolina, talking to those people, see their traditions, their values, their ceremonies, their sayings, how they speak.
If I was going to write this one about the Indian woman, I know an Indian family. I would have to go and spend some time with them and talk to them about their families and how they see things, And people often don't tell you the truth,
I know.
What I mean?
It's what they say and what they think is different,
Right. They want to say things that put them in a good light.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think, Indian girls are very pretty as well. I saw, so they have this brown skin, and they have such a brilliant sparks in their eyes. I think that's a high concept, the idea with this Indian pedestrian.
Yeah.
It could make a film, or you start with a novel, and then after it works as a novel, you can realize it as a movie.
Yeah, this would make a great movie, because the Indian wedding is so. They have a fire, and they very colorful, and the bride paints herself up. So my last scene, she's painting herself up for the wedding, and he's outside in the car. I mean the lover,
Yeah.
And it looks like they're never going to get together.
And they have a different religion. They're not Catholic. They have a
Hindu.
different Indian, and I like this mentality. That's good for us, because they are very colorful as personalities.
Well, in the story, I have her saying that we see God as love, and he says, "Oh, so do we." this. We see God as love too. um, yeah, she prays to an idol and stuff like that.
Did,
Well, she
did
prays to the goddess.
a question that everybody always asks, for example, is I saw a video with Lee Child and Stephen King talking about storytelling.
Hmm.
Lee Child said he recognizes himself in this character, Jack Reacher. He sees himself in
Yeah.
some parts of it. Do you see yourself also in this Indian love romance? Is there also a part of you?
Uh, Only an idealized self.
Okay.
Yeah. Uh, well, the guy that I'm writing about is an actor, right? And actors and writers have a lot in common, you know. So, and I've worked in restaurants, so I think I can make this all very believable. Yeah. Uh,
And it's also probably a kind of an interest to you, probably when you write it as an actor, you fall in love with this woman. You can imagine what happens, right? Because you always change. You're playing the role of her, you're playing the role of this rich
yeah.
guy, you're playing all the roles, so acting may help you to become a good writer as well. And you
I
spoke
took
about that
acting.
too, yeah.
I took acting classes years ago. When I was teaching at UC Extension, they gave me free classes. Every time I taught a class, they gave me a free class, and I'd use them. I'd take the free class, and I took 3 acting classes. And boy, did I stink when I had to memorize the lines. Oh man, I couldn't say somebody else's lines. But then when I took improv and I could make up my own lines, the teacher thought I was a genius.
I believe it, yeah, because I think that you were able to act very spontaneous in your dialogue, and
Yeah.
especially you in your book called Advanced Techniques, your second book. You had this beautiful, greatly written scenes, dialogue scenes, where you
Yeah.
improve the quality step by step.
Yeah.
And for
Yeah.
me, it was astonishing how you can show exactly how it works. How you say, look, this is a boring dialogue, and look, this is a first step where they
Yeah.
don't have only an informational dialogue. They have a dialogue on,
Yeah.
on status conflict. And so you improve and improve this dialogue step by step. And I am very curious and happy to read as soon as possible your finished book, when you finish it, when it comes out, about no,
Right.
romance, because I think that makes you such a brilliant and unparalleled teacher that you really can do both. You found out the most simple techniques, because you wanted to know how it really works and make it easy. As you
Yeah.
mentioned, when you were driving with your lorry, in the city, and you found out what premise is all about because you were
Yeah.
really working hard. What is it? It's easy to read it, but to understand it and to
You know,
to use it, that's difficult. That's difficult, or to apply it.
well, Lester used to tell everybody to read Egri, and I think Egri's hard to read. I think he's very philosophical and I think there's misprints in the book that in his book that make it hard to read too. It was badly edited. Um,
Yes,
yeah.
yeah. So, what metaphors? Which meaning does metaphors have for writing? For example, Star Wars is for me, because I want to talk about myth also with you. But metaphors for me, for example, Star Wars, this thing is a metaphor. A metaphor for life. There's the good side and the bad side. That's the evolution in the future. It could possibly we would find another planets with life on it, so they could look like this. So for me, it's a huge metaphor. We can relate to it. What does it mean for you, the word metaphor, or how, Cinderella is a
Well,
metaphor, it's a
you,
metaphor for blossoming, for
yeah,
becoming,
but
yeah.
you're a screenwriter, and so screenwriters think about screen metaphors, whereas novelists think about word metaphors.
Hmm. Hmm. So they're word metaphors, but the story could be a metaphor as well. So you have on different levels, metaphoric.
Yeah. It's way beyond me, Uwe.
Okay, okay, okay.
But I do know, like I have students of mine and friends of mine who had just crank out metaphor. Me, I have to work at them. When I'm doing my rewrites, and I have to really think about them. My uh, but other people, but some people I know, they just crank them out and they're beautiful. Um, like there's a um, I got to be careful because I know you speak wonderful English, but here's a joke I would tell at writers conferences. I would say, uh, you know you know what a simile is? It's like a metaphor.
Okay.
So
I
you get
don't get it.
a simile. A simile uses like or as.
Oh, okay.
Right? So a simile is like a metaphor,
Oh,
right?
of course it is. Yeah.
And I'd say that, and people would go,
Okay.
Another joke I used to tell, I used to when I talk at writers groups, I'd say there are 10 rules of writing. I'd say read, 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 write, 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 suffer, suffer, suffer. And then people would say, that's only 9. And the 10th is don't use too many exclamation points. you, you don't get that one either.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah,
well.
yeah. Um, you wrote the book, the key, the power of myth.
Yeah.
How did you get in contact with this idea? How did it come into your life? What do you think about it?
Well, Joseph Campbell, the mythologist, he used to teach at the same place I did. He was ahead of me, but he used to teach at the same place. And there was a lot of people talking about him all the time. And then I went and I heard a lecture from a screenwriter who was using uh,
The hero's
uh,
journey.
his ideas in screenwriting. And I thought, well, hell, this could apply to novels as well. So I started reading. I started reading about it, and then I started writing about it. And anything I read about, I write about, of course, right? No sense wasting all that good time. Yeah, but I think in many ways that's my best book, but uh, it does the worst. I mean, sales wise. Um, and I think it's probably I don't know why exactly that is, but it's really yeah, the key. It's really powerful book, and it's
Absolutely, wonderful book. Yeah,
powerful, powerful concepts.
absolutely.
What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to take Joseph Campbell's ideas and make them useful to writers. That's what I was trying to do, because Campbell is like he's looking at stories from the outside in, and I'm looking at stories from the inside out. So I want to put the writer into this experience of the hero's journey and show how because what happens when people uh, try to use these concepts is they make wooden characters who are just walking through the
Hmm.
you know the
Through the conflicts or whatever it is. Yeah.
yeah, but they have a kind of wooden feeling to them. They're not really creating interesting characters that are doing this, right? Or they think that they don't have to if they do this. No, no, it's the same. You're writing the same thing. You've got all the same rules. Interesting characters, well motivated, overcoming obstacles. It's all the same thing. But the thing with the mythic thing is that there are certain mythic things that appeal to the reader because it's the reader's born with them, with these things, all these mythic paradigms already in their brain. That's the most amazing thing. You know, that's really amazing.
What
You
Carl
know,
Gustav Jung said, with this unconsciousness, that you have these archaic structures already when you're born. You understand them.
right, right. Like right from the first time you're like, why do kids respond to fairy tales? I mean, Why aren't they bored with it? Because they've they've got the structure already in their brain, and you're just when you read the kid the story, the kid is just plugging in the parts into the parts already in his brain. It's really astounding. It's really amazing. Uh, they have found some things, and I mentioned them in that book when I was doing research about like the morphology of the folktale, which was I forget the guy who wrote it, but he discovered that in studying folktales, I think they were Polish folktales, and he discovered that there were like a given number of elements that occur in these folktales. Hero leaves home, hero goes to another land, hero meets a girl, hero. There were these elements of the folktale, and I think there were like 28 elements of the folktale. The thing that he found that was so amazing, and it amazes me, is that not all the folktales have all the elements, but if they do have the element, they're in the right order. Isn't that astounding?
Absolutely.
Isn't that astounding? These are folktales that are created over hundreds or thousands of years. And if they have them, they're in the right order. It's amazing.
And the storytellers, there are people who call themselves storytellers.
Yeah,
They go to
yeah,
schools or whatever venues,
yeah,
and they tell this classic folk tales. And they say they are holy, and you will adopt them year by year, but they're classic and they're bigger than yourself. And I had a discussion with, I was at several conferences where storytellers performed these stories. And it was
uh-huh.
amazing how religious they regard these classic
Yeah,
plots, these classical themes. Yeah,
yeah.
and
Well,
they're
these
very
ancient,
powerful, and we understand them. They go deeply inside of us.
yeah. Well, these
Yes.
ancient books like the Iliad and the Odyssey and the Beowulf and things like that were told by storytellers over and over and over exactly the same. You know, they every once in a while they dig up a scroll in the Mid East and they discover that the Old Testament stories are exactly as they are in the Bible today. Right? They haven't changed at all. You know, and that's because people are like determined to relate to them the same way.
To this collective unconsciousness, there is a
Yeah,
kind of yeah structure. I believe in it. And I
I
see that Joanne K. Rowling, with or um, or George Lucas, they're fans of Joseph Campbell. They read
yeah,
these books. They looked which metaphors they represent. They looked at the archetypes. They looked at these powerful character traits that you described
yeah,
in your book. I loved
yeah,
it. I think it's about 19 character traits that a hero has. And I don't know why we relate so much to these strong characters like Luke Skywalker
yeah,
or Harry Potter,
yeah,
and their success is so enormous. It's much bigger than anything else.
yeah.
And we love when they have miraculous power, that they know things that we can't do.
It is astounding, isn't it? That Harry Potter phenomenon is just. My granddaughter's 11 years old. She's read the whole Harry Potter series, and these books are big fat books, and she's now reading them a second time. She enjoyed them so much. Holy mackerel! But that just tells you, when you can read a book twice, there's something really deep in that book. There's something really there. Yeah, something really there.
And it's an interesting world that has been created. It's like for me, it's like a metaphoric world. It's a bit of medieval, and he's so
Yeah,
powerful, Harry. And from my point of view, children, what they want at most is having power, being strong, being able to change something, and with
yeah,
energy, or to be able to fight somebody.
yeah,
They want power. And I love how much Harry Potter, grows with his power and the magic he has. Even he starts like a male Cinderella. He has a very bad situation. His parents are dead, both,
Yeah.
He lives under the stairway. He's in a very bad situation, and he has a heritage. He has to follow this. His
Yeah.
fate is already there, and he
You
needs
know.
his fellows. Otherwise, he can't grow. That's a thing that I love in orchestration. That he's not able to do anything. He needs his suppliers, his helpers. Otherwise, it wouldn't work. And it's human. We work together, and something you know is better than when I do it by myself. We don't like the superheroes that can do everything else. So we need the aunt in your, the Indian aunt, that changes the situation for her, because she
Yeah.
sends this guy. So yeah, for me
Hmm.
that's a wonder, that you have this kind of an orchestration, and that you have, and that in the myth story you have this unbelievable vitality. There's the idea of having power and
Yeah. Well, it's strange you say this because the psychologist Adler, you know him?
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's what he
Alfred
said.
Adler,
Freud
yeah.
had it wrong. It's not sex, it's power.
Yeah.
When I read that when I was young, I thought, holy cow, that's really true. It's not sex that people are after. Sex is just part of power, right? It's
Exactly,
just
exactly.
another kind of power.
And that's for
Yeah.
me amazing, that your Indian protagonist, this woman, the pedestrian, how powerful she is. She signs the contract. And I think, my God, don't sign the contract. You kiss this guy, but she does it. And this power she has in herself, this fascinates me. Even I'm a bit embarrassed. What is she doing? She kisses them. She's not allowed to kiss this guy. You don't do that. But she does it. And I think, oh my God, there's something going on. There's a certain interesting premise I like. There's this intuition, there's love and passion. And to have great babies, you need passion too. You need.
Yeah. I don't think people understand these old cultures and the effect that they have on people. I mean, I saw it when I was a kid and I lived in a Sicilian neighborhood. Holy mackerel! There's a very old culture. Wow.
In
And
Syracuse.
there's, huh? In Syracuse, yeah.
Hmm.
And I lived in a Sicilian neighborhood, but they had down the street was the Northern Italians, and where we were was the Southern Italians, and they didn't get along. Southern Italians and Northern Italians. To show you how powerful this is, a friend of my brother's, his brother, Falcone, his name was, married a Southern Italian, and they were Northern Italians. So his family disowned them, and the Southern Italian family disowned them too, right? So
It's Romeo and Juliet. Romeo and
yeah,
Juliet.
hey, but
It's a
this was in
metaphor. Yeah.
1950,
Yeah. It's
and
eternal.
and so the young couple had a baby, right? So the grandmothers would sneak over because of fathers, no, we're not having to cut them off, they're dead, The grandmothers would go over to visit the baby, right? Well, they sometimes both came at the same time, and they met each other, the two grandmothers. So the two grandmothers become buddies, taking turns babysitting and taking care of the baby. So the two grandmothers were,
Unbelievable.
yeah. And
But
then the two grandmothers said, "The hell with this crap," they said, "We're gonna get everybody together,"
but this is a high concept as well. What an unbelievable strong story,
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
isn't it? That's
Yeah,
a fantastic story.
yeah,
That the grandparents say our kids are weird, and we have to do something for our grandkids. We have to change the world because we're wise and we're over that situation. What a wonderful premise. What a wonderful story.
yeah. It was,
I thought.
the guy, the young guy that got married, uh, he became the largest real estate holder in the United States. He's still alive. He's extremely wealthy. Extremely wealthy. Yeah, he's really became extremely wealthy.
You know, I
Various
think America is a very a good playground or a ground or a field to have stories. I don't know, because you have so many cultures. You know, you have the most
Yeah.
races or religions in the world come here. You have the Native Americans. You have, I don't know why, but I have the feeling like you're much more diverse than we are. You have very
Yeah.
religious people, like the Amish. You have very open-minded, yeah,
Yeah.
the Beta Breakers festival where naked people are running around. You have from
Yeah.
hippie to Amish. You have extreme opposites. And for
Yeah.
storytelling, opposites are very the basic of everything. So
Yeah.
I think this is, United States is the United States of stories, the United States of storytelling. I don't know, or of United States of Jim Fry. I don't know.
Well, when I was in Germany doing that workshop, a guy in the workshop said, "What do you have to do to start a business in California?" I said, "Well, you need a bank account in the name of your business. So you go down to there's certain newspapers that are authorized to do this, and you go down and you put an ad in the paper that you are Acme, Acme Discotheque, right? That's you. So you put this ad in the paper that announces that you have this pseudonym, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And then you, after you, the newspaper will give you a certificate that you've done this, and then you take it to the bank and you open an account on that name, and now you can get checks. That's what you do. And the guy said, "What?" I said, "Yeah, it takes a couple hours, It costs you about $15, for the ads." He goes, "That's all you do to start a business?" I said, "Yeah, that's it." And then from then on, you better pay your taxes. But, yeah, that's all you do to start. He said in Germany, you got to go to this bureau and that bureau and fill out this form and that form. And he said it's just a freaking nightmare. I think that's the big difference with the United States. There's still that idea that you want to try something new, go right ahead. We're with you. Like Hewlett Packard started like that. They went down and put an ad in the paper, and they started in their garage. Well, there's people doing that today. There's all kinds of new businesses being started. Well, you can see in the paper how many people are trying it. There's a list of people. Uh, I don't think that fiction writing, though, is as popular as it was. I mean, I don't think that, like in the where I used to teach, they don't have anywhere near as many fiction writing classes they used to have. I think people want to write nonfiction more now. I don't know.
Why? Because in the Bible was written by, I guess, 70 people writing over a time period of 300 years.
Yeah,
They told the most stories, and they're very powerful. And for example, my grandmother was very religious, and she
uh-huh.
always reflected or relate or thought about those stories and tried to improve her life, and so
Yeah,
they were very powerful for her. But I have the
yeah,
feeling like when I read novels today, fiction novels,
yeah,
where do I find myself? Where can I work with myself? Because very often I have the feeling like they're only full of suspense and entertainment, and I lost 5 hours or 10 hours of my life with a
yeah,
great time. But what
yeah,
do I take out of it? Because you always say fiction is about truth. There's a
yeah.
difference for you. Can you repeat what you think about the difference between fiction and nonfiction is?
Well, nonfiction is about the facts. It's about the facts, and I write a lot of non. I mean, a lot of I write nonfiction. These how-to books are nonfiction, right? And the difference is that the stuff I'm writing about, the facts that I'm writing about, are true for anybody, all time. Anybody at any time. 50 years from now, people can pick up my book and it's going to be true, right, to the facts. But fiction is not true to the facts. And in fact, I get this a lot of times when I'm teaching. People will say, "Well, this is based on a true story," or "This is really true," or "This really happened." Well, I don't give a shit if it really happened. That's not fiction, right? What I'm interested in is this true to human nature, and the best fiction is true to human nature. The best fiction says look at this situation where you got this kind of character that went through this kind of transformation, right? That's good fiction, you know. Um, you got a this Indian girl who falls in love, and that's her call to adventure, so to speak. And now she's up against all these obstacles. She's she's fighting against herself. She's got all these inner conflicts, and she's fighting against herself.
Like
And
her
the
mother, it's an heritage,
and
Her
the
mother had
guy
the
is
same problem.
she's fighting against duty.
Yeah,
It's the war, duty versus love inside her heart, right?
that's what it's about. That's the
Right.
premise. Yeah.
Well, you can read the story 100 years from now. It's gonna seem just as real, because the same thing is going on.
My
Now, if I was actually if say I was going to do a big budget movie about this, I would have his family opposed as well. I would have you know, his family. You're not going to marry a foreigner. I mean, these people are true blood Americans, right? But it, in the scenario that I wrote, I didn't. That would mean make up more characters
Yeah,
and
yeah, no, more character and more conflict, of course.
and more
Or more
complication.
complex. Yeah, more complex too.
Yeah, but if I was going to write a novel, okay, I'd
Mhm.
do it maybe.
In for me, for example, Putin or Erdogan, Trump, these are very exciting characters right now. I have the feeling like you're reading them all the time, and you're surprised or fascinated or shocked or you like them or whatever. But I have the feeling like we're in a period right now where the most interesting characters comes out of the real history. I don't know if this is competing with fiction writing as well.
Oh, hmm. Well, certainly people. I mean, people watch a lot of movies, and they read a lot on the internet. Boy, oh boy, people. I think the average person who has access to the internet spends 6 hours a day on it or something. This Turkish president just told Merkel, what's what, right? That was in our paper that he told her that don't use the word Islamic extremist or Islamic militants because Islam is a religion of peace. And according to our press, she sort of accepted this. Did she? I don't know. Is that what happened? It
I
was.
didn't I know that they met, but I don't know exactly what came out.
Oh yeah, boy, oh boy.
Yeah. Have you seen from George Martin his TV show or heard about it?
No.
The Song of Fire and Ice or Game of Thrones?
Oh yeah, I've heard that. Yeah, I've never seen it.
Because a lot of people say that the best storytelling is now in these TV shows, big
Yeah,
serials.
yeah,
And these are huge metaphors of life. In this Game of Thrones, you see everything. You see the Romanovs, you see the Christian church, you see every big story combined in a fictional plot because he loves history, George Martin. So
hmm
he combined it, and you're shocked because I never saw somebody so sadistic like this emperor there, or I was shocked. And now the seventh season is coming out this year,
Oh,
and people are looking at this like they load their battery. So I think you're right that people are in the internet. They are very often on these streaming platforms, and
yeah,
especially they love these long storytellings, with a lot of
yeah,
seasons, like Breaking
yeah.
Bad and so.
Oh,
And you can earn money. You make more money as a writer probably by writing for HBO or Netflix than you
yeah.
do by writing a novel. So talent is going there. and it's fascinating having this huge production value. But I see
Did you
very strong plots there right now.
did you watch Breaking Bad?
Yeah, I did. Yeah,
Oh man, I love that show. I
yeah,
thought they did one hell of it. Now there's transformation of character for you, right?
absolutely, absolutely.
Holy cow.
And it's a very wonderful constructed, that he gets in this situation that there is no
Yeah,
other way to act like this, and it's going like down and down, and you're shocked how it accelerates,
yeah.
like a downward spiral. Yeah.
How'd you like the black guy that owned the chicken chain and he's using his chicken business to deliver the dope? Holy mackerel.
Yes.
That,
Yes.
it's the least likely dope dealer you've ever met. That was great. I really love that show. But Lisa wouldn't watch it.
Yes. Of course. It's hard to
Uh,
watch it. It's disturbing because you reflect your own life when you see this. It's to see a bit the problems of America in this, Breaking Bad thing. A teacher wants to be responsible for his family, take care of everything, but he can't do that anymore. He's falling down. He doesn't.
yeah.
He can't. Doesn't. I think the idea of Breaking Bad started in 2008. When this big crisis have been, and so a lot of people of the middle class lost their home, lost their belief. That changed. Biographies changed,
Yeah.
and I heard that there was a book or a real story behind that. Like often, that there is you a part of it, and you recognize it, and then you make something out of it.
Hmm. I know that, anyways, in my humble opinion, that most readers don't want to read about people in financial trouble.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they want to read maybe about a guy that robs a bank, but they don't want to read about people.
Mm-hmm.
And I often wondered about this. Why is it that this is not you know because it's the kind of trouble we often face. Well, I think the answer is that that's just it.
Exactly.
It's the kind of trouble we face, and we don't
Yeah.
want to read about it in our fiction.
Exactly. That makes us uncomfortable, and we don't get into the flow. We want to be in a dream, and we can't
Yeah,
escape. Because I met a North African or an Algerian storyteller, and he said we were the poorest family in the world. We were Bedouins, and he
yeah.
said when we had hunger and we didn't have something to eat, and it was every evening. The only chance was our mother told us great fairy tales, and she told fairy tales that we survive, and we forgot that we were hungry. And I said, people tell stories that they survive, and this was his first feeling, because his father died. Mother had 7 children. They were living in the tent of Bedouins, and they had nothing to eat, and it was so hard. So it was the stories. And I said, without the stories, I couldn't sleep. So I had a story, and I believed that food is coming, and so I could sleep. And even I didn't have food, so I nourished myself by eating in my imagination. So I want to have
There,
somebody who is rich, because even I'm poor, I want to have somebody. I want to have a dream.
I had one of my students remember my workshop when I was at the Squaw Valley Writers Conference, who was from Virginia in the South, and she said that when she was growing up, they were quite well off. They lived in a really nice neighborhood and they went to a really nice school. And she had a friend, her closest pal, went to the school, and after school they would always go to her friend's house because they had a black maid who did the ironing on the back porch in the cool of the afternoon, or she would do the ironing outside, and so these two little girls would come and sit, and this woman would crank out another story every day, different one every day. Can you imagine? This woman knew hundreds of stories. This went on for years. This maid, she said she smoked a pipe, a corncob pipe, and she'd sit there smoking her pipe and ironing and cranking out story after story after story after story. Well, I mean, that's from the South. there was a great tradition. This is why so many of our great writers come from the South. There's like a great tradition of great storytelling. Uh, a black friend of mine uh, grew up in Alabama, with heart of the deep South, and like people get the idea that all the blacks are poor and all the whites are rich. Well, his family, his grandpa, owned the biggest farm in the county, and they had quite a bit of money. I mean, they were very successful. And he said that they would. His grandparents, right? He would go to his grandparents, like they'd go over to his grandparents, have dinner, and then they go out on the porch, and it's hot in Alabama, especially, in the summer. They sit in rocking chairs, and Grandma would say, "Well, did I ever tell you about this fella that had the hoodoo? The bad magic or whatever hoodoo is, And then she would just start rolling out the stories one after another. And he said that, he became a writer, and he said he'd never in his life, I mean, he's been quite successful as a writer, could anywhere compete with his grandmother in storytelling because she just had hundreds of them, in her head. I wonder if some of these people just don't make them up as they go. How could you remember that many? The South's wonderful storytellers, and and there's a whole kind of, the southern part of the United States is like a whole kind of different culture, even though they now have a lot of people moved down from the north and the west, and moved into the South. In the big cities, it's more like the rest of the country, but in the rural areas, it's still the way it was. A lot of it.
Wonderful. So, by now we're almost 2 hours through,
Is
and
that right?
yeah, really 1 hour and 56 minutes
Time?
exactly, and
You're gonna put this on Netflix, or I mean on
on YouTube.
YouTube. Wow.
Yes.
You have to break it up in three pieces or something, right?
No, you can do it on in one thing. They want to check the content when you load it up, and
Yeah.
then they check it, and if it's okay, you can let it in one piece. That's okay. Some years
Well,
ago, you have to split it in different sections or acts, but now you can let it be
well,
in one complete program or in one complete cut. Yeah, that's a problem.
well, for the interviews that I've done, the longest one I did was an hour.
Okay, but I
And
haven't seen it yet because I saw
it
shorter
was,
ones, 15 minutes or 20 minutes.
yeah, I do shorter ones, but I did that one with Dorothy Dorothy Blackcrow. That's an hour,
Okay.
I think.
Ah, okay. Mm-hmm.
Did you see that one? That's so she was on an Indian reservation for
Mm-hmm.
12 years.
Mm-hmm.
She was on an Indian reservation. Boy, she's just fascinating. What
Yes,
happened on it? I mean, that's like a different planet. I mean,
absolutely.
the Lakota Sioux Indian Reservation was
Mm-hmm.
really, and at that time when she was there, the the Indians were having a rebellion, and they killed an FBI agent, and so uh, the FBI, I mean, I think they had 100 agents in this. There's only 6,000 Indians, and they had 100 agents there for years. It was like, and that was when she was there. So she really had an interesting time. She's a really fascinating woman. She wrote a book about it, a memoir that she just published, and I started reading it. God, it's really amazing. It really reads well. It's an amazing book. I'm really looking forward to reading the rest of it.
I sometimes in your life you get access to very, very strong situations, or changes. And I
Yeah,
guess she was part of a very strong, powerful situation, like one of your, sorry?
yeah. I tell you the weirdest thing when I used to do these workshops up in Oregon at the Oregon Writers Colony. They had this big log house that's on the ocean, and we would have like 8, 10, writers at a time, and they would always make the arrangements on who was coming. And anyway, I had done a workshop in Florida, and I met a couple of guys in Florida that wanted to work with me some more, so they came to Oregon and to the workshop. and she was there, and the rest of the people from Oregon. He had been an FBI agent on the reservation at the time that this happened. He was one of the FBI agents. Holy mackerel! If looks could kill, he'd have burned at the stake right there, boy. I mean, it was unbelievable. And he was in that. He came back several times, and she came back every time, and they became friends. I mean, it's the most amazing thing, you know. It's like becoming friends with a Gestapo agent or something, you know. I mean, it's really amazing. They became friends.
Like the old Italian grandmothers, you know.
Yeah, right. When push, you know, like, and she had all kinds of ideas about how horrible the FBI was, and he kept saying it's all a bunch. Like she said, they used to tie the hands of the Indians up with barbed wire. And he said never happened. Never saw any barbed wire. Never even heard of any barbed wire. She absolutely swears that, you know, that they would take
I
an Indian into custody and put barbed wire on his wrists.
I think that it's a wonderful idea when you do these videos because it's very interesting hearing your questions and how you start empathizing and listening to those people. I think it brings you in contact with other worlds, and it's good because you are so strong. But I think it's always very
Well, I mean,
fertile when you are in contact with those people. I love these interviews that you already shot with those people, with your
but you know
alumni.
what a what a great gift I've had in my lifetime to work with people like Dorothy Blackrow, and Steve Brown, who's the FBI agent. I mean, I've met so many wonderful, talented, hardworking writers, you know, and who have gone through some really interesting situations in life, you know, really fascinating people, and it's really been a great gift. You know, it's really been a great gift, and yeah, I'm still doing workshops. You know, I'm 73. I'm going to be 74 next month.
And
Yeah.
what is your favorite workshop model for creative writing? Because you have writing groups, and this is what you all speak about, that it's
Well,
important to have a regular meeting groups where you criticize and
yeah.
help each other. But what is your favorite workshop?
This group in Oregon, I try to get with them twice a year, and when I'm not there, they meet. They meet, I think, twice a month when I'm not there, and so they all work with each other, and they know each other's stories very well. Um, that's the only thing I do know, and I do them down here in Berkeley too.
And what is your favorite workshop scheme? Your 4 days, 3 days, 2 days?
Well, I usually do Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Okay, 3 days of really, yeah.
Yeah, right. I do Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and each writer supposedly gets two submissions, you know, of 10 pages each, and sometimes you go a little longer, you know, and then sometimes people don't want to read stories; they want to talk about their. I mean, they don't want to read sections of their stories; they want to talk about their plots. So we talk about plots, and this time, this last week when I was up there. Um, we worked on this one gal's plot. She's sort of redoing it, you know, and there was a case where we saw big changes in what she decided she was going to do because she realized there wasn't enough growth in the character and stuff, you know, and it was yeah, it was really nice to see. She's, you know, people that are open-minded have a kind of professional attitude about their work, you know, they're fun to work with, you know. But some people don't have a professional attitude, you know. They take criticism as, you know, people are being nasty and that kind of thing, you know. Criticism is extremely helpful, you know. What else are you going to do? Have we really been at this for 2 hours? I'm supposed to be getting ready for my trip to Australia.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, we're heading out. Did I tell the people? We're heading out tomorrow. My wife and I are going on the Queen Elizabeth to Australia, leaving in San Francisco. Would that be great?
Yeah, for how long? For 2 weeks or?
It's the cruise is 3 weeks, 21 days, and then we'll be in Australia, and then only going to be there a couple days. We'll fly back. We were
Great.
there. We were there 2 years ago. I think 2 years ago. Australia is a very interesting place. Um, there, you're a different world. Different world. Yeah.
So, Jim, I wish you a great time with Lisa on your cruise ship. For me, it
Okay.
was a fantastic chat with you. I'm so I'm fully motivated to to go ahead with storytelling and with creative writing, and it was very inspiring. And I will look forward probably seeing you in this year again.
Oh, that'd be great. Uwe. That'd
And
be.
I would love to take to reconsider the idea of probably organizing a workshop here. But I guess we have 300, 400,000 people who read your book, and you have a huge fan base here.
Yeah.
So, but we stay in touch and talk about it, and we will see each other this year again. And I want
Yeah.
to go deeper into this field. And I think it was for me it was a fantastic talk. I hope you enjoyed it as well.
Oh, I did very much. Always nice to talk to you, Uwe.